So the keys to the success of Myanmar's agricultural sector looks like for example, know-how, technology, and missionaries. But Myanmar lacks in some ways of this. What could the two countries do? Either the Israel can support these, or what could the two countries do to get this kind of know-how and the technology and machinery that Myanmar agriculture sector is in need of?
Well, it's not for Israel alone. I think it's an effort that Israel can be part of it. I don't have the pretension that Israel can alone change things here, but it's part of the process. And by bringing, as I said, the students from Israel who are gaining experience and exposed to modern methods, bringing experts here, and we have plans to bring more and more experts to Myanmar. Myanmar is becoming a priority within our agency of international cooperation by inviting people from Myanmar to Israel. I think this capacity building and relation building can help. Sometimes we have problem of inviting people to Israel, and then we have a problem of how to finance the flight, which is usually not financed by Israel. But we try to be creative in that and find ways to enable it. As I said, our budgets are not so big, but the abilities are, I think, quite substantial, and the way that we approach problems, I think it's something that can be relevant to Myanmar.
I'd like to go discuss about the different styles between the two countries. Last year in September, Commander-in-Chief Senior General Mayoline had a 4-day visit to Israel. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about that visit and also the military different styles between the two countries?
Well, first, you must understand the situation of Israel being in a quite difficult environment and not always a friendly neighborhood. So we had to develop abilities that in defense that are quite, well, to say unique is sin, but quite interesting. And the relations between the two defense establishments of Israel and of Myanmar are good. They've been good along the years. And the visit of the Commander-in-Chief in September was, let's say, a step in that ongoing relations. Being not only meeting the President of Israel and the senior people from the political arena, but also visiting some military bases and some defense industries. And the idea was to strengthen the ties and to see abilities of collaboration. The situation of Israel and Myanmar is not the same from the security point of view, but I think there are a few things in Israel or things that we developed that are relevant to Myanmar. And also I think that the exposure of the senior people, the people in defense, to Israel and to other countries in the West or in other places, it is important to see the role of the military and the place of the military within the system of the country. It was a good visit. I hope it was not the last one, and we have ongoing relations in this regard, and I hope they will continue.
How about the weapons supplies from Israel to Myanmar in the last few years?
We have some sales of defense items from Israel to Myanmar, mainly in the area of marine side. It was published in the papers and newspapers about Coast Guard ships that will be sold to Myanmar, and some of them will be assembled in Myanmar. And it's not only selling a product, but also building capacity of how to build such ships. There are other items that are on the table, not a very large scale, but still things are going. I will not go into details into what are the things that are there, but it is not only selling weapons, it's also dealing with medicine, training, academic issue, some other things in this cooperation.
Yeah. How do you view the relationship has changed over the period when we compare the relationship, Israel's relationship in terms of weapon supplies and defense ties? When the time was Myanmar was under the military regime, and to the relationship that recently where the President U Thein Sein was, and also the new government of Aung San Suu Kyi. How do you see the changes that has been taken place between the two countries in terms of defense ties and the weapons supplies?
But I think as part of the changes that Myanmar is undergoing, also the relations between the countries are more between the countries are more transparent, and things are being done in a more transparent and open way. And I believe this tendency will continue with the new government. The government still has, we still don't know what will be the relations between the government, the military, and how things will function in this regard. But we do not see the military or the defense relations as separate from the overall relations. So it's part of, it will be part of the whole relations between the countries. But I hope to have more visits and to have more exchange of views and to have more influence of the one army on the other, and that the Israeli example or the Israeli way of doing things would be relevant to Myanmar.
How do you view the Israel's place in the world? Israel is a small nation, but a major influence in the Middle East, and also a very strong relationship with successive American governments. There are some criticisms on the handling of the Palestinian situation, and also the moves of settlers, new settlers into the Palestinian territories. What would you say to the critics or to this criticism? And with this, how do you view Israel's place in the world?
Well, Israel is part of the world and would like to continue to be part of the world, and we live in an area that is not so easy and not so, I would say, not so simple. And we see that in the last, I think, 5 years, that things that 6 years ago seemed solid, now they are totally changing in the Middle East. So it's somewhat difficult to judge Israel in eyes of, let's say, of Asia or Europe or the United States, because the area we live in is sort of an unstable area, and we see that countries that were there before, Iraq, Syria, Libya, they are now something different. So we have to count on ourselves in the area of defense, in economic area, because we don't have immediate neighbors to deal with, to make commerce. And we have neighbors, Palestinians, who are not always open to dialogue. I mean, it's never easy, not for them, not for us. And in the level of leaders, there are some decisions to be taken about the way we want to see things and the concessions that we are willing to make. We, I mean, both sides. And we wouldn't like to be in a situation that we are dealing with someone that, or some regime that a month or a year later will not be there, and then we shall have to confront new dangers. So far, we had some experiences with the Palestinians, some dialogues, but in the recent years, it is much more difficult, especially since the Palestinians are now divided between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, between Gaza on one hand and West Bank on the other hand. And we try to contain the situation and not to worsen it. A critic will always be there, and there's a lot of, let's say, good PR to the Palestinian cause, sometimes rightfully, sometimes less, and Israel being bashed on that in the UN and in other forums, but there's lack of knowledge and lack of understanding of the situation in the area for many people, and this is something that I think could and should be changed. Israel will continue to contribute to the world in certain areas, I mean, in agriculture, in medicine, in science in general, and will keep its place, and the critics will continue to do their way.
Yeah, I understand it is a very complex picture that the Israel is in. Looking at that, or reflecting this complex situation where Israel is in, how do you view the democratization and peace process in Myanmar? That has been, because we have been, you know that we have had conflicts in the country, armed conflicts for many years. So how do you view the peace process that Myanmar has been undertaking or trying to undertake in the last few years?
Well, peace process or getting to peace is never an easy challenge. And from what I see in the last few years, or the time I arrived here a year and a half ago, there is progress, and I think democratization is a very important role. Has a very important role in the progressing in the right direction. As in any conflict, concessions has to be made from both sides. You don't want to, you cannot eliminate or win, because especially when you talk about internal conflict, it's the same people, it's the same country, and you have to get to some agreement and to some solution. Sediments are there, so it's never an easy thing. It's not overnight. It's not just by a decision of one person or two people. But if people are taking it seriously and bona fide, and are really interested in settling the situation, getting to a peace, I believe it is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible.
What do you view of the challenges for the new government in Myanmar, apart from peace process?
Well, peace process is one of the challenges, of course, and continuing the reforms that starts here, and strengthening the education and building the capacity and improving the situation, the economic situation of the people, elevating Myanmar and bridging the years that were, let's say, Myanmar was closed to the world. So on one hand, Myanmar has a very big gap to close. On the other hand, it can close it. It can leap some of the stages in the way. As for example, you have so many smartphones today. People, in many cases, the first telephone a person has is a smartphone, not going through all the phases. So some shortcuts that can be made in order to get to the place that Myanmar should be. And I think the potential is huge. That's obvious. And unleashing opening the ways and opening and letting the talents to be expressed, and letting the people do the things that they can. This is something that can bring, I think, Myanmar to a much better place.
I've seen you for some time, like going out, mingling with the people in Myanmar. You are one of the foreign diplomats who actually go out and visit many places, and also do a lot of work, like with communities in Myanmar. How do you see your like activities in Myanmar so far? What are the kind of like moments that you really remember the most, or you enjoy most?
Well, I do believe that when you come to a country, you represent your country with the other country, but you also the other way around. I mean, I'm also the source of information for Israel about Myanmar, and in order to be more accurate and to be a better representative of both sides, you have to know the people, not only the officials, not only the people that are in the high positions, but also the people of the country, and to try to feel the country, not only the official in the official level. So this is the way I believe a good diplomat should be able to act in all levels. So I think well, let me try to rephrase it. Well, there were a few moments of, on one hand, meeting the president, giving the credentials, or having less official meetings with the lady or with other people here, but also going to the Chinatown in the evening and sitting there and having beer and visiting the Naga and having witnessing a fascinating festival there, or traveling in Kaya state and experiencing some of the roads that should be improved, driving myself there. So I think it's a mosaic that some moments of official, maybe official positions or official opportunities, and visiting the grassroots level. Going to the field and talking to the farmers and trying to understand what are the problems and how what do they live of and how things are being conducted here, and trying to maybe Israeli mind or is always looking to try and to see how to improve things, how to do things in a better way. At least in many cases, this is the thing. So you go and look at a village or in a city or in somewhere, and you always think about how can we make things act better? How can we improve? How can we not fix, but and it's also always some kind of curiosity about how things are working, how people are behaving, how people are reacting. You can never get completely to a different society, especially when you don't speak the language. But the closer you are, the closer you're exposed to people, the closer the more you visit, the more you see, the more you feel, then you are getting closer to try to understand on the human level and on the country level, and be relevant to what.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.